Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And as always, a very warm welcome to today's event titled From Cockpit to Cabinet Building and Sustaining an Emerging Pakistan with the Honorable former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Shahid Khaqan Abbasi. My name is Myra Ahmed, and I serve as the Vice Chair of Research, Policy and Initiatives at the Rethinking Pakistan Forum and the Director of Political and Educational Affairs at the PSA Coalition. As always, I open today's discussion on behalf of our forever chair and president, Areeb Shahid. I want to begin by expressing our deepest gratitude to the entire RPF and PSA coalition community. At the end of August, we launched a fundraising effort to provide water facilities in Areeb's memory. This was a dream that he communicated to us while here, but unfortunately didn't have the time to fulfill. Thanks to your exceptional generosity, we reached our initial target of $1,550 in just 2 days and reached a double target of $2,600 within 2 weeks. In the coming weeks, the Hisar Foundation will begin work on 4 rehabilitated wells and 3 hand pumps across rural Sindh and Punjab. This would not have been possible without your support, and it stands as testament to the legacy that Areeb leaves behind, one that continues to touch lives far beyond this community. Today's discussion sits at the very core of RPS mission, exploring how business, policy, and governance intersect in shaping Pakistan's trajectory. Few embody this more fully than Mr. Shahid Khaqan Abbasi. His journey from the boardroom as the founder of Airblue to the cabinet as Pakistan's 21st Prime Minister is as rare as it is instructive. Our goal today is to diverge from standard political discourse and focus on the business operations, strategic decisions, and lessons that Mr. Abbasi has drawn from leading Pakistan's foremost airline. Through this business case study approach, we aim to draw insights that span from the micro level of entrepreneurship to the macro level of economic and policy. We're deeply honored to host him today, and thank you so much, Mr. Abbasi, for your time. Today's discussion will be moderated by Abu Zair Sahib, RPS Director of Student and Youth Initiatives, Abdullah Bhalli, RPS Director of Communications and Public Relations, Aiza Salman, a dedicated member of the PSA Coalition, and myself. Without further ado, I will now hand it over to Abu Zair to initiate our moderated segment.
Thank you so much, Myra. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Sir Abbasi, thank you for joining us. Thank you very much for your time today. I do have to say, being born to a father who served as a fighter pilot in Pakistan Air Force and later turned towards business while taking an active interest in politics, I am personally fascinated by your journey. As Myra outlined, though, our purpose today is to have a discussion that diverges from typical political commentary and instead zeroes in on your leadership of one of Pakistan's foremost airline, Airblue. Leading such an institution comes with both unique challenges and responsibilities, and I'd like to begin by asking, when you launched Airblue in 2003, you were entering a market dominated by PIA's monopoly and rigid state controls. What was your core strategy for differentiation, and how did you assess the risks of competing with a state-backed incumbent?
Yeah, thank you, Abuza. It's good to see all of you. Let me just allow me to just start with our memory of Areeb. I was fortunate to know him in his last days. Me and Zayed visited him several times in the hospital. And I can tell you he faced his illness with a great deal of courage, huge deal of courage. And I think his memory will stay with all of us for a very long time. The way he worked for the PSA, the way his affection for his fellow students really touched all of us. And I'm grateful to Myra for her support during this period. And let me congratulate her on her graduation. Life will go on, but I think Areeb will stay as a part of her life. About your question, it's I actually my father was in the Air Force, and that's how aviation. We were born into aviation. So we spent our childhood in PFA bases all over Pakistan. And my father was one of the first 10 or 12 people who actually built the Pakistan Air Force under the leadership of Air Marshal Azhar Khan and then Air Marshal Noor Khan. And they did not just build the Air Force, they built a world-class organization. And what you see of the Air Force today is basically the roots that were laid at that time. The foundations of the Air Force came from that period. A very strong work ethic, very high quality, very high in commitment. And you've seen in the last in the May War also, that the Air Force excelled as always. So it's a so we kind of grew up with that environment, and I personally do remember all of the shaheeds of the 65 war. I went to school with their kids. So aviation was part of our life, but my father did not encourage us um, to go into aviation for several reasons. But I came to the US to study electrical engineering. I was 16 years old, and during my childhood days, I spent a lot of time reading up on aviation, especially Second World War aviation. So I really became kind of a expert on Second World War, the history of aviation, Second World War. So it was quite a fascinating history. So I came to the US. The first thing I did was I looked for a flight school, and I used to go to learn to fly in a bus in LA, which is not a bus country. But I kind of persevered, and by the age of 17, I had a flying license. In fact, I got my flying license before I had my driving license. So that's kind of a benchmark on how things were in my life. It was a passion. Um, and so that continued. I graduated. But I kept flying. I learned to fly aerobatics. I taught aerobatics for several years. So it was never a profession as such, but it was a passion, and it took a lot of my time. Um, and then I came to Pakistan. I was working in the Middle East, and then politics I came into by default. As you know, my father was killed in the Ojri camp blast. We're not a political family, um, but he had joined politics in the 1985 non-party elections, and he was quite a substantial person in Pakistan's politics at that time. He contributed much, and his legacy stayed on, and the people in the constituency kind of drafted me into politics. And it's been 37 years now, so it's been my whole life. Um, in 1990, so I kind of was a member of the parliament. The assemblies didn't last very long. The governments were removed one after the other. I think the one that lasted the most was like 2.5 years of a 5-year term. In 97, in the second PMLN government headed by Mia Nawaz Sharif, he sent me to head PIA as the chairman of PIA. I was 38 years old, and PIA was Pakistan's premier organization. So it was quite a controversial decision for him to make that. So I had this challenge of, I really did not want the job, but since I was assigned the job, I thought I'd make do the best that I could do. So I ended up in PIA. It was a state-owned company. There was no competition at that time, but competition was coming in the shape of Emirates and all the Gulf airlines. Um, so at that time, PIA was not a losing concern. We made money. We had our own balance sheet. It was a public company, and we competed in the market. But I could see that PIA, with its state-owned legacy, would not be able to compete with market-based efficient companies which are coming in. And even at that time, I did a whole study, and we recommended that PI should be privatized. But that did not happen. And then the Musharraf coup happened in 99, and I ended up in jail accused of hijacking. So I was the main accused in the so-called Tayara Sadish case in 99. So I was in jail for 2 years, and luckily there was a very strong judge, and he, did not bend to the military government at that time, and he acquitted us. So anyway, that passed. I came back out of jail. There's a lot of pressure on me to switch parties, but I did not, and I was made to lose the 2002 elections. The first time I lost. I'd already won 4 elections by that time. So this was the post-COVID period. So I kind of looked around and, on what to do now. I was, after maybe 14 or 15 years, I was a free man. I was not in politics. I was not in parliament. So I saw an opportunity in the post-COVID world where airlines were suffering and aircraft were available at very cheap rates. And Pakistan has had one of the first countries in the early 90s to allow the private sector to come into aviation. But those companies have not done well. So I looked at I had headed PIA for 2.5 years, so I knew what PIA was about. I knew what the challenges in aviation were and what the mistakes the earlier private carriers had made. So I wrote a business plan, and at that time I was teaching in universities also, in the private sector universities that just come in, and I used to teach different subjects at the BBA and MBA level. So I drafted one of my students into making the business plan with me. So together the two of us wrote the business plan, and I then went out to raise money for it. Venture capital is not easy to get in Pakistan. So it was not a very successful foray into the market. But I did get some traction, and I, kind of modified my business plan to see what the market could deliver. Then I had a friend, and we'd gone to university together, and he was visiting. He had stayed back in the US, and he was an entrepreneur in the IT business. He was visiting Pakistan, and he was very scared of airplanes. He never flew with me when I was in the US. He was always very kind of wary of airplanes. So we went to a wedding, and the business plan was lying in the back seat. So he saw the business plan. He said, "What is this?" I said, "I'm trying to form this airline." He said, "Let me have a look at it." So he took a look at it. He said, "Okay, why don't you come to the US and we together will go out and raise money." So to cut a long story short, we ended up with we needed $8 million. So we raised 4 million in the US, and we got another 2 million from Pakistani fund, and we also the same fund gave us another 2 million as a loan. So it is basically a 4 million venture capital by that company, which is a substantial thing in Pakistan even in those days. So we went out, and we applied to the government for a license. The way the path to forming an airline is you have to get a license first, which is a permission to build an airline. Then you build the airline, and then you get the operator certificate after you have built the airline. So we went out, and nobody had applied for a new airline in the 10 years before that. So we went out, and we could not find an application form to make an airline. So we went into the files, and we pulled out the file of one of the older companies who had applied, and we kind of used a computer. Very difficult in those days to make a form on a computer, but we managed to do that, and we filled it out, and we submitted it to the civil aviation. So we got a letter back 2 days later, and it said that you have forged official document, and why should action not be taken against you? So we were very taken aback that we'd done a very good job in making a perfect form and submitting it. So now we hit with the bureaucratic approach of government. So I understood what was happening. So I went back, I took that form, I whited out the stuff that was there from the original applicant, the original form that he had applied in like 1992. And then I made a photocopy of it, and I could not find a typewriter. A typewriter had gone out of business by that time. So what do you do now? So in Pakistan, if you ever been to the courts, there's a guy outside who's called the oath commissioner. So he has an old rickety, in those days, an old rickety typewriter, from the 50s or 60s. So I went to him and I said, "Look, I have to fill out this form with a typewriter, and I can't find a typewriter. You're the only one." So he said, "Oh, what are you applying for?" I said, "The airline." So really, he said, "Really?" So he said, "Okay, when I finish in the evening, I'll give you my typewriter, and you bring it back the next day." So I spent like half the night typing that form in, and I managed to do that. We submitted the form, and but the government was kind of efficient. The defense minister was a friend of mine. It was the people Q League government under Musharraf. So he was very helpful. And on December 19, 2003, we got a license. Now we have to build the airline. So we had commitment for money. So the money part was covered. So I went to the US to talk to the lessors to lease us airplanes. So startups are people are very wary of startups. But luckily, because of 9/11 and the slump in the market, we were able to talk to literally the best lessor in the world, which is a company called ILFC. They're a beautiful head office in Century City, where the awards take place, the Oscars take place, the same building. So we went there, and the owner and the CEO of that company was a person called Steve Hazy. Steve Hazy was a pioneer. He's like the godfather of aircraft leasing in the world. He still is a very substantial player today. And in the 99 Paris Air Show, when I was heading PIA, we had contacted Steve Hazy for 8 747-400s brand new. And we got a reply back from him that if you want 20 or more airplanes, I have time, otherwise I don't have time. So this is 99. Now we're in 2004, early 2004. And so we contacted the ILFC, and Steve Hazy said, why don't you come over? So I was actually leaving that day. My flight was in the afternoon from LAX. And so I said I can be there at 7 a.m. So at 7 a.m., Steve Hazy was there with trying to lease us 3 15-year-old A320 Airbuses. The same guy who 4 years earlier had refused us even to see us, to sell us 8 747-400s, is now sitting with us personally on a table and negotiating for 3 old Airbus aircraft. So by lunch, we had finished the deal and we had signed on the bottom line, and we now had airplanes. So I went back and we literally built an airline between like mid-January and mid-June. There's a 5-month period. We built a complete airline. We trained pilots, we trained aircrew, we trained engineers, we built offices, we did all the paperwork. The huge amounts of paper are required because it's a very heavily regulated business. So we were able to do all that. It's really, I mean, I look back, it's really, and nobody believes it when you tell them that we built a whole airline from scratch in 5 months. And on June 16, 2004, our first flight, we took our first flight. I and the lady she was an ex-British Airways air hostess and also trainer with British Airways, Libby, she was from Karachi. So we sat in the back of this aircraft. Aircraft was full, and we had 4 cabin crew in the aircraft, and 3 of them had never even flown in an aircraft before. So this was actually their first flight in life, and they were cabin crew. So it was a small company, the great camaraderie. People were very excited. We were very happy about working for an airline, and we were all learning, and we all learned, and we grew. And the regulator was fairly weak because they had no experience of aviation. PIA was a big player, dominant player in the market. They kind of looked down upon us. But I had learned one thing, that in the aviation business, in the airline business, it's not the aircraft that are the most important part. It's the systems. How do you sell the ticket, the revenue systems, the maintenance system, the departure control. So there's a whole host of systems. And when nobody even knew of AI, airlines actually were using AI to price the tickets. So that's where the story started. Luckily, PIA did not adopt a predatory approach. There was a couple of other private sector airlines who were already there. And they kind of, because we were so efficient and we were so much ahead in as far as systems are concerned, that they were not able to compete with us, the other two airlines. And we soon, within 2 or 3 years, became actually the dominant player in the private sector of the aviation business. PI was still a legacy airline, high costs, but they still had a market, they had a brand name, and that's where we started from.
Thank you so much, sir. Firstly, let me just say thank you for your kind words again about Areeb. I know everyone in the RPF team appreciates your support much more than we can describe in words. It is fascinating to hear your story. Very few people would be able to say or flaunt that they had a flying license before they had a driver's license. But I want to turn towards something else that you have touched upon a little bit. But aviation is uniquely exposed to shocks, from oil price volatility to currency depreciation and regulatory shifts. What mechanisms does Airblue use to hedge against these risks? And which of these mechanisms have proved the most effective in the Pakistani context?
You're very right. Aviation airlines are a very tough business because everything in the world affects you. You may have, let's say, 9/11 happened in the US. It affected every airline in the world. It literally killed several airlines, very large airlines. So you have to be wary of the shocks, and you have to be kind of efficient enough and be flexible enough to counter those shocks. It's a very a flexible business. I may be flying to New York, and if my the route doesn't work, I can fly the airplane to Tokyo. So you can always take out. You're not limited to one market. You can always build a new market. So and again, if the oil prices go up, you've already sold tickets at a lower price, and the oil prices go up, your costs have gone up. So that's why in the history, the airlines are now over 100 years old. And collectively, in these 100 years, they've lost more money than they've earned. So it's not a place where you really, people make. Some people have made a lot of money, but overall, as a business, the operating margins are very, very thin. At one time, they used to be about 2.2%. Even now, they're about 3%, the operating margin. So you can just imagine how even a small shock can. And it's a very highly leveraged business. For example, Airblue has a capital base of $8 million. We don't need more money, but we're actually doing business of several $100 million. So, even a small shock can kill a company. So that's why airlines have to be very efficient, they have to be very flexible. And I think the bottom line was given by the founder of Virgin Air. And he basically said that if you want to become a millionaire, start an airline. But you have to be a billionaire first. So if you're a billionaire, an airline will make you a millionaire very fast. So that's where the airlines are. You have to be very responsive. You have to be on the ball. It's a 24/7 job. I ran Airblue for 10 years straight, and it's very exciting. It's passion, but still it's very taxing. It's a lot of responsibility. You're flying thousands of people a day, and safety is primary. Airlines are about safety. Regulation is very strong. So you have to be very, very on the ball.
Thank you for that answer, sir. In Pakistan, we can definitely take inspiration from Allama Iqbal when it comes to aviation. Just taking a simple couplet, "इंतु शाही है परवाज़ है काम तेरा, तेरे आगे आसमां और भी हैं." तो just building on top of that, आपके सामने भी आसमान काफ़ी सारे थे. You raised a lot of capital, which is known to be very exceptionally difficult in Pakistan. You've already touched upon how you structured financing for Airblue, but we're also interested in hearing about what trade-offs you had to make between scale, risk, and control, especially in the early years.
So, yeah, that's where the systems come in. because the systems gives you visibility. Airblue is now about 22 years old. And I can even pull up the first ticket that we've sold. So we are very, very strong in IT. In fact, we built our own IT systems, and they are much stronger than literally anybody else I know. So we have visibility of the most critical thing is how much money do you have. So I can even now on my mobile, I can see every flight that has flown in the past, that is flying today, that will fly tomorrow or a month from now, and I can see exactly down to the last rupee how much money revenue do I have on the flight. So that gives me a lot of strength on how I price tickets, on what my financial situation is, and that's the key. Systems are the key to an airline. If you don't have strong systems, you don't have visibility. For example, in PIA, the year had ended, and I could not be told what our revenue for the year was, or what revenue was on a particular sector or on a particular flight. In Airblue, that's something which is given. And Iqbal also said something else, which was that Bade Mukhalif se na ghabraye Iqab. Bade Mukhalif se na ghabraye Iqab. ये तो चलती है तुझे ऊंचा उड़ाने के लिए. And this is basically the definition of airfoil. It's a lift. So you always, when the airplane takes off, it takes off into the wind because it gives you more lift. So, you always have to get lift in the aviation business.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, sir, for those insights. I think the stories you shared were truly interesting, and I think we'll all be taking many sound bites away from them, particularly the Iqbal share. Out of curiosity, where was the Airblue's first flight to?
We flew 2 flights back to back. Our base was Karachi, so we flew Karachi, Islamabad. And then
Okay.
half an hour later, we flew a Karachi Lahore flight.
Wow. Okay.
So,
Wonderful.
yeah. So it's quite a memory. It's quite an achievement because so many things. I mean, I literally counted them one day, and before an airplane leaves, there's about 700 plus different independent activities which have to be completed for that flight to go out. So the first day it looked like a huge challenge, but now it's.
It's a
But then
daily.
again, it has the safety because you're carrying passengers is very primary, and we unfortunately had a fatal crash in 2010. We were 6 years old. We had a fatal crash. We lost 152 people. And that was very, very traumatic. We were a small company, 5 airplanes. We knew everybody on the airplane, the responsibility of meeting the families. So that literally we had to rebuild the whole airline after that because everything suffers. There's a lot of questions about you. People come and check safety levels and all that. Luckily, it was not a systemic issue. It was basically pilot error. In aviation, you never assign blame. Even the accident investigation reports never assign blame. They don't say, "Oh, this guy did it." They just find the cause and they leave it there. So that was actually quite a traumatic experience for all of us. Meeting the families, taking care of them, and we I think did a reasonable job of looking after the families to whatever extent we could do, and also keeping the airline going because a small airline like that would probably should have gone under, but luckily we had a very family-oriented company with the pilots and the air crew and the management. We all came together and we managed to overcome that really traumatic accident.
I can imagine. And I think what you mentioned, I think it's probably the factor of humanity that underpins the Airblue ethos that allowed for that resilience through that difficult time. And drawing from your insights, I want to now turn a little bit towards the aviation industry as a whole, and in particular, the recent developments that we've seen in the industry. There has been a lot of discourse around PIA's potential privatization. There's also been the rise of new airlines like Air and Fly Jinnah. So, how do you see the landscape of Pakistan's aviation changing? And how is that shifting Airblue's business strategy?
Yeah, it's open market. Anybody can come in, but aviation market only absorbs so many players, and there's different operating models. For example, Emirates, Etihad, all the carriers of the Middle East, they are what we call six freedom carriers, which means they bring people from different markets all over the region into their hometown, and then they fly them out into third destinations. We are people like Airblue, we are what they call origin destination or third, fourth freedom carrier. Freedoms are what the rights you have according to the ICAO or IATA. So we are third, fourth. So we fly origin destination. So it's a very different model. It's a very different market. So personally, I really do not fear the Middle East carriers coming into Pakistan, although the market is limited, so they do make an impact. But we have enough of a market in the origin destination. People who don't want to go through Dubai or some other market. It takes more time, takes more effort. So we're able to, sustain ourselves against those airlines. But yes, they are definitely very well funded. They're quality airlines. So we have to remain a low cost carrier. So basically, and low cost does not only just mean that you don't sell tickets cheap or you don't provide services. It's a whole ethos within the company that you cut costs everywhere. So you have to be very efficient on the cost side, and that's why you survive. Selling $100 tickets. Airlines they operate in dollars. Local currencies don't affect them. Our fuel is in dollars, our maintenance is in dollars, our aircraft leases or repayments are in dollars, and even the crew is basically dollar denominated compensation. So you have to be, when currency fluctuations hit you very hard. So it's a continuous challenge. It's you can't sit back and relax. It's you have to continuously adapt yourself to whatever is happening in the market.
Great. And I think adaptation is something that we've all come across in the Pakistan context, at least. So you've highlighted how Airblue's unique selling point is its alternative business model. To delve a little deeper into that, if Airblue's journey were to be dissected in a business school classroom, for example, what would you frame as the single biggest lesson that you've learned from steering the airline through these kinds of industry transitions?
Oh, that's a tough question. So many choices. For example, the airplane choice is critical. So, and then it's a continuous choice because you start off with a single aisle, a narrow body aircraft, and then you have an opportunity to transition to wide body. And that's one example I can give you. So we started off single aisle with the Airbus 320, and PIE had always rejected the Airbus 320. They had preferred the alternate with the Boeing 737 family. And I was told by everybody in Pakistan, oh, the Airbus 320, it's a failure. It's a very high-tech aircraft. The pilots don't like it. It has a joystick. The pilots like this macho, control column with the push and forward. And this is like a pressure-sensitive, side stick, like a joystick, like you play at home. And it's fly-by-wire, and it's very complicated. But I looked at at what was happening in the world, and I found that the 737 was basically a large aircraft family operation. So airlines with large number of aircraft generally chose 737s, and the smaller carriers like us generally chose A320. Like you could say that 737 was wholesale and 320 was retail. And again, but we got a lot of support from Airbus. So we managed to make that choice. And just a small example, we had an opportunity to go wide body. The whole ethos, the mindset, the operating philosophy changes. So we went to that and we almost died. Because we could not fill the airplane every day. And we just were lucky to get rid of those wide body aircraft and stay and bring in more narrow body and grow in the narrow body business. So you have to continuously, there are nearly not any models you can follow You have to look at your own market, look at your own strategy, and work it out, and hope that it succeeds. Because airlines can die very quickly. I've seen large airlines with 80, 100, 150 airplanes in UK die while there were flights in the air. People were getting on airplanes at the airport. People were checking in, and the airline shut down. So, and cash is very important in an airline, because if you can't pay for fuel, you'll have problems. So it's continuous effort. It's not something you can, and even people make mistakes and they still succeed. So you must be able to learn from your mistakes and, work around them.
Wonderful. I think it's very interesting to hear you speak from a business perspective, and I know we're all finding it very interesting because it's a very different approach that we're aiming to take today. But I'm now going to do the opposite and shift a little bit from micro to macro, because as we've said, you've had the unique experience of leading both in the private sector, where Airblue had to compete as an efficiency-driven airline, quick commercial decisions, whereas in the public sector, where as minister and later prime minister, you were working in environments that required a lot of compromise and alliance building. So based on that dual experience, what insights have you drawn on balancing efficiency and competitiveness with the realities that come with political and institutional constraints?
Yeah, so I had a unique situation because I had come from being electrical engineer and a project manager into politics, and then almost 17 years later, I started the airline. I didn't be in the airline business and come into politics. So I already knew politics. I knew what the constraints were. I knew how to navigate that environment. So, when I went back, when I left the airline, went back, and even when I ran the airline, I could navigate the bureaucratic environment. I could understand where the regulator was coming from. And having run a state-owned enterprise, airline itself, I knew the whole spectrum of the business. So it's always a challenge. I mean, airlines are a daily challenge. You don't get bored. You're always innovating. You're creating efficiency. So it's quite quite an experience, and especially when it's your passion also. I think the best thing in life is when your business and passion come together. I think that's really an ultimate place to be.
Thank you so much for.
Yeah, sorry.
If you have something to say, please continue.
No, I just want to say that whatever I learned in my years in running the airline actually helped me greatly when I became a prime minister, which was about 5 years after I left the airline to go into politics as a minister. So it was always that, where my political experience helped me with the airline experience helped me with running, much higher stakes as a minister and as a prime minister.
I'm sure. Thank you so much for delving into the past and speaking so passionately about it. But I think I'd like to shift gears now and focus on the future. You've mentioned how Pakistan played a role in shaping Airblue for how it is and how it helped you run the airline for what it is today. What do you think about the ideal version of Pakistan? Like, what does that ideal version of Pakistan look like economically, politically, and socially in a way that also promotes sustainable business growth as well?
So if you really look at what a company is and what a country is, they're very similar. A country is just a company with a basically a social responsibility for working for the welfare and the well-being of the people. And how do you achieve that? You grow the country, become a stronger country, financially, economically, militarily. So it has its own challenges. The same thing that a company has at a much lower scale, at a much smaller scale. A company has the same challenges. So you're working for a few hundred employees or a few thousand employees, and whatever decision you make will affect those employees. will affect the market also. Countries are the same thing. Whatever decisions you make in Pakistan will affect 240 million people. So if you don't take decisions, that's the worst part. So you can really compare the two. And countries are really about working for the people, working to give them a better life, give them a better future. And if you really ask me about Pakistan, what Pakistan lacks today is basically rule of law. The day we realize that if you don't have a rule of law, which means you will not have political stability, there's no respect for the constitution, there's no system. Like an airline will not run without a system, a country will not run without a system. And so if you violate the constitution, there's no respect for the law, then you will not have political stability, you will not have stability of policy, there'll be investment will shy away, and the country will not grow. And that is what's happening to Pakistan today. We're just unable to grow because we don't have political stability and we're unable to implement the rule of law in the country. So that's our biggest challenge. We have a lot of challenges, but that's the starting point is to establish rule of law in Pakistan.
Of course, that's a very interesting take, and that gives me a really good segue to the next question, that if you were given a free hand or a 5-year mandate, what would your first 100 days look like in practice with that reform? Or how would you carry out that set of reforms to set Pakistan on a path towards sustainable and inclusive growth, as you've mentioned, in light of the problems that you've described?
Yeah, it all depends on where that mandate comes from. So if I'm given the mandate, I'll probably fail. But if the people of Pakistan give it to me, I have a fighting chance. So it's very important that you have moral authority when you're in these positions. So if you come through a rigged election, you don't have the moral authority. So that's critical. So Pakistan today needs massive reform, massive reform. And we're not even talking of reform. So the first thing you would be doing is building a consensus. The givens are that you must have rule of law, respect for the constitution, a constitutional rule. But after that, I think it's important that you're able to sell your ideas, you get support for your ideas for reform. Reforms are always painful. They're always, they hurt a lot of interest. They hurt a lot of legacy situations. So you must be able to counter the argument. So you have to sell it to other parties, to different provinces. So that's what you need to do. And then you have to implement that reform. Without reform, Pakistan will not move forward. Our systems of governance, of development, of providing welfare for the basic needs of the people, they've all failed. So you need totally radical solutions to them. And radical solutions are difficult to implement in politics. They're difficult to sell, but that's what you need to do. That's the biggest challenge for any future political leader in Pakistan. And so that's where you start. You start with implementing reforms and taking decisions. These are two critical things in any company or in any government.
Thank you so much for describing that in such detail and with such clarity, that starting from rule of law and then implementing the policies across the parties and the provinces, it's absolutely crucial. Thank you so much for your insights in this segment. We've greatly enjoyed everything that you've had to say, from your role starting Airblue and the plans or the hopes that you hold for Pakistan. With that, we'll conclude the moderated session and we'll open the floor for our audiences to share their questions. Abdullah, I'll hand it over to you to guide the Q&A session and to bring audience's perspective into this conversation. Thank you.
All right, Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much, Aiza. We've received a wide range of questions from our audience, and some have been submitted ahead of the event, and many more are coming in during the course of the conversation. So we're going to turn to a few of them. So so that we understand this from the beginning, we're going to be going into the questions that were asked during the registration first. And if your question matches that, it will be merged into that one. And then we will go to the questions that are being asked right now. So starting off, we have Brother Ahmed Jamal from CUNY, Brooklyn College. How is the Pakistani aviation industry looking to expand into markets where it's needed, like, for example, the US or Europe, under the current circumstances, like given the lack of aircraft and logistical restrictions and whatnot?
Yes, Pakistan, we must understand one thing. Pakistani airlines can only be successful if they're able to serve markets with a large diaspora or where there's visas are freely available. So today, we basically have just two markets. One is the UAE and the other is Saudi Arabia. A large number of Pakistanis travel there. There's also a large diaspora there. So you get the best of both worlds there. But then you have UK, you have Europe, you have Canada, and you have the US, where you have large populations. So if you are able to, and these are very competitive markets, and they do not have a year-round business which can sustain you. So you will be very careful when you go into these markets. Like these days, we're evaluating the, let's say, the UK market. The UK market as a low-cost very low. So to make it happen is quite a challenge. Again, and also then you're constrained by the availability of aircraft in the market. Today, it's a very, very tight situation. Both the two aircraft manufacturers are sold out till 2035. There's no more slots available. You can only go to a lessor and get an aircraft. And with Pakistan's economic situation comes into play, and if they have a choice of putting aircraft in Europe or USA or Singapore or Japan, they'll go there. They will not. So Pakistani airlines today for leasing aircraft pay probably the highest rates in the world. It's a premium to put aircraft into Pakistan. Our insurance rates are very high. So it's a very tough place to do aviation, and also our environment is very poor. The physical environment, Pakistan is and the Middle East are the two worst places to physically operate aircraft because the engine life is reduced. As an example, we generally our engines go into shop around 10,000 hours. In Europe, they lost 25,000 hours. And in Iceland is number one in the world, they last 40,000 hours. So just imagine, and that's the biggest cost in running airline. So Pakistan is really handicapped in when you come into the aviation business. You have to be very, very good, very efficient to survive here.
All right. So yeah, I see. Ahmed, I see your question. If we have time, we'll go into that. Moving to Muhammad Farouk from DePaul University. From your experience founding Airblue and later leading the federal government, what specific governance and regulatory reforms would you prioritize so that PIA's privatization makes a competitive, consumer-friendly aviation market while safeguarding jobs and national connectivity?
That's a tough one. I've always been an advocate of privatizing PIA. The regulation in Pakistan generally is not up to par. Our regulators have a lot to learn, whether they regulate power or gas or aviation. Even the State Bank, which is one of the best regulators, financial regulators in the world at one time, is not up to par. So the world is changing very rapidly, and our regulators are not able to, to keep in consonance with that. So if a regulator is weak, then the companies there are also weak. So if the aviation regulator is weak or is too strict, then the airline business is difficult to do in Pakistan. What do you do? How do you? So you have to fix. You have to like create capacity in the with the regulator first, and then the airlines will have to follow suit. And the regulator, for example, I always put this. I say this at every forum. I've worked with 8 regulators around the world. One of them was the Pakistan Civil Aviation Authority. The other 7 regulators, the philosophy is how do we help the airline put their aircraft into the air. That's how they'll make money. The Pakistan Civil Aviation focuses on how to put an aircraft on the ground so that their regulation requirements are met. So they don't have that flexibility or the understanding of the market to allow you to operate safely while allowing you the flexibility. So the rigidity of a regulator literally kills a sector, and that is the issue with Pakistan. Um, it's a small market comparatively, and in the aviation business, you compete against the best in the world. So if I'm running an airline, I'm competing against Emirates, I'm competing against, British Airways, I'm competing against Virgin Airways, I'm competing against Gulf, Qatar, all these guys who are very, very high quality airlines. So I have to be very, very good, very efficient to survive in a market like that. The passenger has a choice. And we're competing, like I said, against the six freedom carriers who can consolidate passengers and sell the economy class tickets very cheap because they have almost 50% of floor space on the aircraft is premium. So that's where they can make money and they can sell the economy below me. So it's quite a challenging environment commercially and from a regulatory point of view for airlines.
All right. Sardar Usman asked, in your view, how can young people make a meaningful impact in politics while navigating the challenges of party politics and corruption?
So, politics is not a profession, right? It's a calling, it's a place to contribute. So you must go into, and it's not a place, unfortunately in Pakistan, political power and financial power have kind of joined hands and it's become a place for, extraordinary levels of corruption. And there's very limited or almost no accountability. In fact, the system is designed to protect the corrupt. So you must, so politicians do not enjoy a good reputation in Pakistan. People do not trust politicians. That's kind of true all over the world, but in Pakistan, it's, and then the politicians have done little to help themselves. So, if you do not pay taxes yourself and you're imposing taxes on others, then people will not trust you. And if you cannot justify your income, then people will not trust you. So the politicians have, only themselves to blame. So if a young person wants to come into politics, you'll have to join a political party, you'll have to agree with the ideology, and you must also realize that our political leaders themselves do not believe in democracy or in the parliamentary system. This is my experience. They want to operate as a monarch. So whatever they say, is supposed to be implemented. So that's not how the world works. So the prime minister is only the first amongst equals. He's not a monarch. He's not a sovereign. But the behavior is very sovereign. So the leadership has to learn to understand that, they have to work with the cabinet. They have to work with the parliament. That's something that is very difficult, or so far very difficult for Pakistani leaders to do. And that's where the whole thing fails. So you must realize that you're working with people who really do not themselves believe or understand how the democratic or parliamentary process works. But again, if you, it's a place you can contribute greatly. If you excel in a profession, you can, help yourself, you can help a few other people or thousands of people or 1 million people. But in politics, you can affect the lives, if you're able to contribute, affect the lives of hundreds of millions of people for maybe decades to come. So the challenges are immense, the rewards are also immense if you're looking for that. I don't mean financial reward, I'm talking about the reward, the satisfaction of being able to contribute.
No, thankfully that's something I hope we can all aspire for. But piggybacking off of that question, looking at Pakistan today, what's one area where young people could realistically drive change even within the existing system and society, whether it's whether it's political, whether it's industry based or economics based? What do you think is somewhere where the youth would be prime able to change or directly impact that part of society?
Pakistan, the youth is not just a segment of society. They are the society. It's a country where 2/3 of the people are below 32. So the youth is Pakistan. We must realize that. It's not about catering to niche market, looking for a niche market. Pakistan's asset are the youth. Pakistan's liability is also the youth. If you do not address their needs, they will become a huge liability. For example, today we have 30 million kids out of school. We're doing nothing about it. If these 30 million add to the other that have not gone to school, you'll have a large segment of society who will not have an education. And that becomes a liability. So the youth, the world is changing very rapidly. Technology, AI especially. So I think, and the world is shrinking. I think for the first time, we've talked about a global village for a long, long time. The world has now shrunk. And I think COVID has really shrunk the world. Today, I can be sitting in my home in Murray and get the same education as a Harvard student, or have access to the same information, the same knowledge that MIT student or wherever you are has. So that's a huge plus. But then I have to make that effort. So the government's job is to provide an environment which allows the economy to grow, and which allows jobs to be created, and which allows entrepreneurs to go into business and be successful. That's where the government has failed. They do not understand all this. So I think what we really I personally believe the youth will drive the change very rapidly when AI takes hold, and AI will take hold very, very fast. I think 2 years, 3 years, you'll have a different world. It will operate very differently, and as they all tell you, the first sign of AI success will be massive unemployment, massive shift in what jobs are today. You'll probably, they say, 80% of people will be working in jobs which do not exist today. And that's where the youth comes in. People like me will probably be dinosaurs. We probably still are dinosaurs today. So we'll be left out of, and they cannot understand what the youth of Pakistan or the world understand today. So it's quite a challenging situation where, the people who have the capacity to provide that environment or the power to structure that do not themselves understand what the youth needs. So all we can do is stabilize the economy, have stability of policy, grow the economy, so there'll be more jobs and greater opportunities for the youth to have their own businesses or grow. And this all, their tax structures, policies, all this relates back to this situation.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Abbasi. We're going to move into the Q&A questions. So I'm not going to spend much time talking. I want to make sure we can get as many people's questions as possible. So Brother Fahad is asking, how can Pakistan boost its IT sector knowing that the government knows it's profitable but isn't taking enough steps? Why are freelancers not being provided with proper solutions? And if some initiatives exist, why does corruption keep blocking the benefits from reaching them?
Yeah, several reasons. Number one reason is, if you ask me, let's say I don't run the airline anymore, but when I used to run it, and even if you ask me today about any business, including IT, I want the government out of my life. I want to minimize the presence of government in my life. I don't want them around. I'll pay my taxes, but I don't want to regulate me. I'm competing with the world. Let me compete with the world. Don't hold me back. The government here does not understand that. And then when you always behave in a security paradigm kind of a mindset, you shut down the internet, you slow down the internet, you control bandwidth. These things don't work anymore. You can't do that. If you are running IT business and your internet slows down, you won't get much business after that. Time is critical. It's a very time critical business. Any business is. So, and despite that, a lot of people have successfully, they become IT entrepreneurs here. Our freelancers are very good. But again, you just have to provide them a conducive working environment and minimize this red tape that we have in Pakistan. It's just, it creates so many hurdles that people just give up and, they move out to Dubai or wherever they can do it, stuff better. So it's very basic stuff that you need to do. Just get out of people's lives, provide the environment, people pay for whatever services you provide them, but, don't operate with this, a police state mindset.
All right. Farooq Javed Abbasi asked two questions. I'm going to try to condense them into one. So he's saying that the ATR aircraft system has worked well for China and India. How can Pakistan implement that in short haul and secondary city routes for financing, route development, MRO capacity wise? And the other thing he's asking is, how do you see the evolving Pakistan-Saudi partnership shaping Pakistan's economic trajectory? So including some of the things you mentioned with regards to gas expenditures, logistics, and getting access to funding, etc., long-term benefits.
Yeah, so Farooq has asked a very specific question about ATR. ATR is the only large turboprop left in the market. There used to be two. One was Canadian made called the Bombardier Q400, and then you have the ATR 72 now. If Farooq can get me aircraft, I can operate 20 ATRs in Pakistan tomorrow. Pakistan is a large ATR large turboprop market. But there's no aircraft available. There's no ATR available in the world, even old ones. And if they become available, nobody would want to place them in Pakistan, because ATR operates small airports, and we have a security situation into most of these markets. Pakistan is a huge ATR country. And unfortunately and paradoxically, as the security situation worsens, the markets becomes larger. Because when road travel shrinks because of terrorism, you get a much larger market in the air. Pakistan, every country needs to balance its relationships, and you have to have relations with everybody. You cannot ignore one at the cost of the other. So there's very little exclusivity in relationships between countries. There are preferences, which are sometimes economic preferences, sometimes strategic preferences, military preferences. And Pakistan has this whole range of relationships. We have China, a relationship for the last 78 years. We have the Middle East, UAE, Saudi Arabia, very strong relationships. They've translated into a large economic base from Pakistan, not from an investment point of view, but basically because there's almost 10 million people, Pakistanis, working in the Middle East. And they are the largest export we have. Today, we export $30 billion of stuff, and the Pakistani diaspora or the community or the people working abroad send us about $40 billion. And that's only in the formal sector. I think another maybe 40 come through the informal sector. So Pakistan really survives on the Pakistani diaspora in the Middle East and the Europe and the US. So relationships always need to be balanced. You can't have exclusivity. And I think the recent agreement with Saudi Arabia, which has always existed informally as an informal shape. Let's see. I think it will have positives for Pakistan, but it does expose Pakistan to certain influences or pressures which may not have existed with an informal arrangement. But that's something the government of the day knows better.
All right. Well, from the diaspora to Pakistan, a heartfelt you're welcome. But unfortunately, we're going to ask one final question. Brother Haider, I see your question. I think we asked that a little earlier. When the recording comes out, you'll be able to see the answer to that question. I'll give the final answer to the final question to Dua. So in your view, how central is rule of law in boosting investor confidence, and what concrete steps would you prioritize to strengthen legal predictability in Pakistan's economy? And I would just add, if you could give an idea of how that would look like, for example, in your industry, I think it would help us get a better picture of what to aim for.
Like I said earlier, is number one, is the number one need of the country. Rule of law, respect for the constitution. You don't like a law, change it. You don't like the constitution, change it. And Pakistan has a very explicit constitution. Our constitution provides for every eventuality. It provides the time frame, it provides the mechanisms of how to operate, and it also defines the relationships between institutions. It also has the oath for every constitutional office holder as part of the constitution. If you read the fundamental rights, the first chapter of the constitution, the fundamental rights, I think no country in the world has it so defined so explicitly. And we've taken away all the fundamental rights the people of Pakistan have. The relationship between the state and the citizen has evaporated. That's what we need to fix. So rule of law is number one for business to operate. And rule of law also means stability of policy, stability of the law. So for example, we talked about the diaspora and the contribution of the diaspora. The country survives on the diaspora today, but there's not one thing that the government of Pakistan does for the diaspora of Pakistan. There's not one thing. We just create hindrances. If they want to visit, okay, you become a US citizen, but you want to visit Pakistan. Make it easy. Make it easy. You have the NICOP, you have this, you have that. Finish it off. Finish off visas for Pakistan. If 140 countries come into Dubai and they don't bomb Dubai, I'm sure nobody will come and bomb Pakistan. So the government has to make life easier for the diaspora. Handing out privilege cards to people, that doesn't work very well. Just simplify, for example, there's a new law today on protecting the investments especially into real estate by the new law to help them, a special courts and all. But that's not the way it works. It will not help much because you have to fix your basic law. You can't have niches in the law. Oh, the overseas Pakistani has a special privilege. Oh, if he is defrauded by somebody, the government will step in. What about the other citizens of Pakistan? So that's why you can't have specialized laws. Laws need to apply to everybody. But for the diaspora, you must just respect them. I think that's all they want. Respect them as people who hold your passports. So that's rule of law is critical. It will provide for everything. For example, in the aviation business, stability of policy, it's critical. I mean, in the last budget, the government added 15% GST onto everything that the airline does. Now, in a business where the operating margin is 3%, you add on 15% to cost, how long will you survive? I mean, there is a company which operates a terminal in Pakistan, an oil terminal. They've added on taxes to that, the terminal structure, where today 82% of the revenue will go into taxes. So basically, they have no choice but to shut down. So there's such irrationality in the whole situation that so the government has to realize that you cannot milk a cow dry. You have to let the cow to give you milk every day. We're just taking away everything, every money from the people who do business. How will they grow? How will they create jobs tomorrow? So government does not understand business. They just need to kind of get out of people's lives and let them operate and let them pay you taxes.
All right, then. Well, that was a very informative session. Thank you for all of our questionnaires and all of our viewers who were asking questions. And Mr. Abbasi, thank you so much for your insights and for engaging with our audience questions. I know we'll all be taking away a lot of very valuable lessons from your responses today, both during the moderated session and during the Q&A. I'm going to hand the discussion back to Mayra so she can bring today's conversation to a close. But again, thank you so much. I wish I could have had a more conversation, but I wanted to make sure everyone could get as many questions in as they could. Other than that, over to you, Mayra.
Thank you so much, Abdullah. On that note, we will bring this exceptionally insightful conversation to a close. Abbasi sir, thank you so much. for the
Thank you.
generosity with
Thank you.
which you shared your time and reflections today. From the challenges of building Airblue to the complexities of running government, your perspective has been both rare and invaluable. This was a truly unique opportunity to hear from you in a different light, and we are very, very grateful.
Thank you.
One theme that ran through your insights, both in regards to business and governance, was the centrality of humanity, compassion, and morality. I want to therefore take a moment to thank you on behalf of the entire RPF and PSA coalition community for the unyielding kindness and support that you showed to Arib and his family. Your generosity of spirit was a true anchor during a profoundly difficult time, and I can assure you that it won't ever be forgotten. As you
Yeah.
reminded us, Arib made and continues to make all of this possible, and as always, we ask that you continue to keep him and his family in your duas. Before we
Sure.
conclude, I would also like to thank our moderators, Amuzar, Abdullah, and Aiza, for guiding the discussion so thoughtfully, and our creative director, Farwa, for her tireless work behind the scenes. To our audience, thank you once again for joining us and for your very, very interesting questions today. We look forward to welcoming you all to future Rethinking Pakistan Forum and PSA Coalition events soon. Have a wonderful evening. Allah Hafiz and Pakistan Zindabad.
Thank you.